Most people have sexual fantasies, and also erotic dreams are extremely common. We may fantasize about our partner, about somebody else. We may want to analyze or understand them, or we may want to forget them as quickly as possible. We may act upon our fantasies or not, and some even fantasize while they are having sex. So, fantasies are a big thing. According to some research in the Western world, the most common sexual fantasies are multi partner sex, dominant or rough sex, voyeurism or exhibitionism, and sex in a public place or an unusual location. So, clearly, as I said, sexual fantasies are a big topic, so I want to briefly talk about it. However, I will do so only very briefly because our type is only one small part of explaining these fantasies or erotic dreams. So, what exactly are fantasies and dreams? Basically, there's some kind of metaphor for a desire, so an exaggerated need, or for a fear we may have. And it's very important to understand they are metaphors. If you have a fantasy or a dream about something, then it does not mean that this is exactly what you want to experience or what you may be afraid of. It's just telling us something much deeper than just a certain scenario. And very often it shows us symbolically which feeling we want or fear to experience. So, with the words of Esther Perel, these fantasies and dreams are complex psychic creations whose symbolic content mustn't be translated into literal intent. So, the fact that a fantasy is a metaphor and should not be taken literally also implies that we may very often not want to act on these fantasies or dreams. So let's take the example of a fantasy about rough sex. According to a research paper from 2009 by Jenny Bivona and Joseph Critelli, more than 60% of women have had a fantasy of being raped, and 14% of women have such a fantasy at least once a week. Now let's be very, very clear. These women do not want to be raped. They do not. It just means that some want to feel the male partner to be assertive and slightly aggressive, but in a gentle manner. They want to experience something else than just tender feelings of emotional bonding or intimacy. For others, it's about trust, about not having to worry about anything, because the partner will take his responsibility for her safety. Yet other women may want to lose control as they are always in the lead. Or women with repressed sexual values may have this dream so they don't have to deal with the guilt or shame because it was not their fault. The latter is a little bit like those medieval nuns who had dreams of demons who came to have sex with them. It was just about a repressed desire. So clearly, one and the same type of fantasy or dream can be caused by many different motivations. So the main question is not what is the fantasy or dream, but rather why do we have it? And in order to understand or interpret these fantasies and dreams, the psychology of the enneatypes can be very useful. But it will not explain everything. Apart from the peculiarities of our type, there is also many other parameters involved, such as sexual repression, trauma, childhood experiences, culture, what you watch on TV, and so on. Still, both the passion and the essence of our type are undoubtedly extremely important in these subconscious dynamics. So let's elaborate on this a bit. Basically, a sexual fantasy may very often be motivated or inspired by our turn-ons, by the ego gratification we seek, by the why we have sex. Very much our unmet sexual and emotional needs that can be very type specific may come up here. Plus, we may also find the motivation of the fantasy or dream by moving along the arrows, resulting in almost the opposite of their usual patterns. And as this may be a little bit abstract, let's go straight through the 9 types. Common fantasies and dreams of type 8 involve the theme of being in control and dominating the sexual act, often with some lustful aspects tied to it. These scenarios may include overpowering and maybe also tying up a partner or being sexually aggressive. Men may want to be the ruler of a threesome or fantasize about maintaining endless erections, sleeping with lots of women, or being a sultan with a horny harem. On the other side, they may desire to be overpowered and possibly be tied up, relinquish control entirely, and fully submit to the sexual demands of the partner. On top of that, there may also be fantasies about being innocent, virginal, innocent love, or being like a little girl. The sexual fantasies of 9s are often very vanilla, but it's also very common that they revolve around sexual compliance and submission. It may also involve being bound, teased, played with for hours while they are helpless. And some of them may go even further, and the 9 may fantasize about extreme bondage or even rape, unable to move or speak, or something even more extreme. On the other side, 9s may have fantasies where they are the star of the show, fully active, fully in the lead, performing like a true master. 9s may also have many other creative and diverse fantasies, such as dressing up, threesomes, sharing partners, exhibitionism, and so on. A central theme in the fantasies of 1s revolves around perfection. This can be about perfection in being a lover, perfection of the partner, perfection of the sexual encounter, freshly bathed bodies, and a perfectly made up bed. And in some cases, they may have submissive fantasies where they are punished for their bad behavior. On the other side, they may have fantasies or dreams about very much the opposite. They may have desires about unbridled sex with multiple partners, about forbidden fruit like sex with a best friend or a religious leader, or just anything where they can fully let themselves go and just have fun. Most of the fantasies of 2s are not about giving to their partner, but they're more self-oriented. So for example, about having all their sexual needs met. They may fantasize about being a princess or a queen who is revered by everyone. They may also imagine themselves being involved in forbidden sex. 3s may fantasize about not needing to perform or having to be the best in bed. So for example, by being consensually overpowered. And of course, the consensual aspect is extremely important here. 4s are very romantic and have a strong focus on their inner world. So idealizing and fantasizing is part of their everyday life. They can get excited just by fantasizing or feeling a connection without there being any sex. They can easily perceive they are connecting with the person just through fantasy. The element of envy and missing what is not there in the present comes up very often in their fantasies and dreams. For example, they may fantasize they are another person, for example, their neighbor or a friend, and that they are having sex with somebody. Or a male 4 may fantasize to be a woman having sex, or a female 4 may fantasize about being a man having sex. So these are fantasies in which they experience something completely impossible. In the same sense, they may think of having the ideal body, or sex with a tree, or growing a larger penis, or enabling a woman to experience a 10-minute orgasm, and so on. 4s may also be drawn to the forbidden. For example, interestingly, many 4s report having incest fantasies, with a parent or a sibling. And of course, it's very common for fours to feel a lot of shame for having all these fantasies and desires. Het types are all too often experiencing sex from the mind. So fantasies can be very vivid and intense. And some may even feel that the fantasies are more enjoyable than the real encounters. Often, the thought of sex is sexier than sex itself. So indeed, some fives may have lots of fantasies, but they are unlikely to share them. And others allegedly have very little fantasies. But two themes seem to be very common among type 5. First of all, the loss of control, which is often about non-consensually having their power taken away, but which may often include some fear-based elements. So for example, they may fantasize about being kidnapped and they cannot be tracked and they wake up in a dungeon. Secondly, fantasies may involve a lot of science fiction, often futuristic and mind control. For example, being controlled by a machine or parasites or a genetic modification system. Or they may fantasize about controlling their partner or being controlled through erotic hypnosis or psychological manipulation. So again, with a strong non-consensual element in it. In combination with the science fiction, it may include a sexual scenario like being assimilated by the Borg or be part of a hive mind. And of course, fives know that non-consensual forms of sex are not okay. So very few will actually implement it. But there may be something like consensual, non-consensual sex though. So they may agree in advance with the partner that the partner can do things without asking for consent, but will still expect that the five will be dealt with respect. Sixes also have lots of fantasies, but they are often afraid to talk about them or implement something in reality. Some sixes may even feel afraid of fantasizing about having sex with friends because it feels creepy. It's as if they are violating a friendship. It's as if they have degraded their friend without their consent. They may also have dreams about sex with other people, but fear cheating in their fantasies or even fear cheating in their imagination, just because they may perceive it already as a violation of their loyalty. Most fantasies of sixes are quite vanilla, but there are also scenarios that may include elements of hazard, but also courage from the side of the six, making them powerful and dominant. So this allows them to be uninhibited and fully in the body. So they basically fantasize of a more confident and empowered version of themselves. And it may also involve high physical intensity to compensate for their own inability to deal with such intensity. So seeing someone slapped or gagged may create a great sense of excitement for many sixes. On the other side, sixes may have fantasies revolving around being helpless. So for example, being tied, being overpowered, being caught in a public place and so on. And finally, also the topic of group sex seems to come up very often among sixes. Our last type is type 7. As they are also living very much in their head, they definitely have great imagination and lots of fantasies, which serves as a key component of their erotic lives. And as they require novelty, they may easily get bored with a partner in bed and may need to rely on fantasies in order to even get aroused. And quite often these fantasies have to be quite intense in order to have their effect, which also means that they would not put some of it into practice. As a matter of fact, most fantasies are things they wouldn't do in real life, because if there is something they really want, they tend just to do it. So fantasies for sevens are an antidote for mental boredom and pain. Sevens want to be able to talk about their desires and fantasies to their partners because hiding it would feel somehow tormenting. And as a matter of fact, some sevens may just be fantasizing and sharing their fantasies with their partner to get aroused, but then not have much sex at all. And finally, many sevens report they have fantasies about being tied or restrained, or about some kind of forbidden sex. So before ending this video, I would like to make it clear again that any type can fantasize about anything. It's not about the what, but the why of the subconscious desire.